I am glad to be part of the Encore learning community and to be back in Arlington Library, even if only remotely or virtually. Thank you very much, all of you, for being with us this afternoon in Arlington and evening in Paris. Please note that all the photos you will see are mine, with the exception of course, of a few screenshots from websites. And usually you will see the name of the city in the bottom right, with some rare exceptions for aesthetical reasons. And when there is no name, that means normally Paris, because there are so many photos of Paris. To pinpoint the origin of this project and this lecture, I have to go back to 2012, when we were ready to move from Arlington, and I try to change my photo, yes, from Arlington to Barcelona. 9 years before we got the invitation in the mail. When we were announcing our coming move, the reactions were all of the same kind. How lucky you are. I love Barcelona. Barcelona is so beautiful. Barcelona is my favorite city. To promote Barcelona, our friends were as efficient as the Barcelona tourism office, which is still sending me every month advertisements about the typical aspects of the city in all seasons, with all the typical aspects and not so typical ones. Beautiful. I started to think, what do people mean when they say this city is beautiful? So in the 2 years we spent in Barcelona, and not one, as we were invited, I explored the city, and indeed I loved it. I love discovering, I love living in Barcelona. And I decided to write a book about the beauty of Barcelona. But I was taken by other projects, and 3 things happened. One, I did 3 long hikes of 50 days each in Spain, Italy, and United Kingdom, going through many towns like Toledo in Spain, Bologna in Italy, or Manchester in England. 2, thanks to Monica's work, I had the opportunity to travel a lot and to discover or return to many cities, especially in France, like Lyon, Switzerland, like Zurich, Luxembourg, Belgium, often going back to the United States, New York. And 3, 6 years ago, we moved to Paris, and since then we have been living on the 21st floor of a high-rise building, enjoying an incredible view of the entire city. So the project changed and became the beauty of the city, of any city. Here, I will not cover the entire table of contents of my book, but I will emphasize some aspects and present the subject, the topic, from the specific angle of the discovery of a city by foot or on foot. First, let's start with some definitions. City. A large or important town. Town, a thickly populated area, usually smaller than a city and larger than a village. So a city is a large town, but a town is smaller than a city. So a city is not a town. We know that the word city has technical, administrative, political, honorary meanings, as we can see in this statement in Birmingham Cathedral, Birmingham, United Kingdom. Let's say the word city looks more glamorous or noble, but in this lecture, I will use the word city and town indiscriminately. Wonder. We admire. We are fascinated by things we find wonderful, marvelous, attractive, beautiful. For centuries, philosophers have been struggling with the word beauty. I will not enter here the discussion. I just would like to retain two ideas from this concept history. First idea, for most of the philosophers, there are two kinds of beauty: natural beauty and human-made beauty, like this painting by Caravaggio in The Calling of St. Matthew in the French church in Rome, Church of San Luigi dei Francesi. On this map, a town is not a work of art, like a painting, a sculpture. It can contain works of art, like this fountain, Trevi Fountain in Rome. It could be a monument, it could be a statue. So it's different from other works of art. A city is a human-made object which grows organically through centuries, like element of nature. On this map of Gap, a town in the French Alps, you see the original shape of the town, roundish shape. You see also, 19th century, some extensions in all directions. Today, of course, the town is much larger, and what we see here is just the city center. Second idea, more or less, we all agree that beauty is in the eye of the beholder. So you will not enjoy a city the same way, depending on your age, your profession, your origin, your political opinions. If you're a city dweller, or if you live in the countryside, I will just emphasize three sets of perspectives. First, haves and have-nots. As I go from one city to another, I am reminded how privileged I am. Everywhere, in Paris, in Washington, D.C., or elsewhere, more and more people live in the street. Difficult in these conditions to enjoy the city. Two, men or women or others. We know how perilous it was, and it is still in many countries, many places, for a woman to go where she wants. Lauren Elkin, in her book Flâneuse, the flâneur is French, is a wanderer. Flâneuse it praises the women who were pioneers and dared to act and move like men. For example, in France, George Sand. In England, Virginia Woolf. 3, travelers seeing a city for the first time and natives being born in this city. She was only in Paris for 3 days. She met the love of her life on the metro. 3 days, Paris, a classic love story. Paris, the perfect place for some wedding pictures. In both cases, you have the Eiffel Tower in the background as the symbolic Paris icon. For me, who was born in Paris and who lived in Paris as a child, the Eiffel Tower was much more. My aunt used to live a few blocks from the Eiffel Tower. We would visit her on Sunday, and after the Sunday lunch, we would all go for a walk to the Champ de Mars, the garden at the foot of the tower. There, I would enjoy the merry-go-round or puppet show, and the Eiffel Tower was a familiar object, almost a member of the family. Paris was too big, too blurry of a concept for a young child. The tower was big, but well-defined. I am almost sure that after Maman and Papa, Tour Eiffel was one of the first words I could pronounce. And I still think fondly of her. In French, she is definitely a woman, despite her impressive phallic shape. Still, I like to take photos of her from different angles, by any weather, at any hour, playing a kind of Where is Waldo game, the real one, the reflection, the little clothes. After these different perspectives between different kinds of people, we can find in ourselves reasons for having different impressions in our discovery of a city. For example, the way we arrive in a town. If we arrive by car, and even more if we arrive on foot, we will go through confusing suburbs, along not so welcoming roads, around so many roundabouts, each of them trying to be original, along endless housing developments, each of them pretending to be different. One remarkable exception. I entered Turin in Italy by the Corso Francia, France Avenue, an impressive straight boulevard more than 7 miles long. If we arrive by train, we are happy to be right in the middle of the city. In Lille, the grayish central station and its environment is now more joyful, thanks to a sunny and welcoming figure. If I enjoyed so much Cadiz in Spain, south of Spain, one reason could be that we, instead of arriving by foot or by bus, we chose to arrive by boat from Puerto de Santa Maria in the north of the map to Cadiz. It was like going back to an old way of traveling. There was some kind of adventure feeling. When we arrive by plane, in fact, most of the time, we arrive by car, by bus, or by metro because the airport is far from the city. But I still remember my first flight from Paris to La Réunion Island, the French island in the Indian Ocean, where I would work and live for 2 years. I remember when I saw springing up from the sea, the tropical island surrounded by clouds, and Saint-Denis, the capital city. You see on the left of the photo, the straight lines of the streets, of the grid, the typical design of all the colonial towns in the world, everywhere, including in North America. And you can see also on the other parts of the photo, the houses climbing up the volcanic mountain. When after 40 years, I went back, I relived the memory and took this photo. The weather has also an influence on our way of seeing. I know Perugia, Italy, only by under the fog, but it was a day, a delightful day. After the rain, the sun. The rainbow brings some colors above all buildings in Paris. The weather, the season, the time. When night rises, the dim light in Assisi, Basilica, Italy, seem like medieval candles. The Christmas lights in Salerno, Italy, bring a touch of magic. And in Seville, Spain, south of Spain, the city of 3 famous imaginary characters, Don Juan, Figaro the barber, Carmen. The streets at night resemble poetic stage setting. Trafalgar Square, London, in its calmer nocturnal mood. London, where Peter Walsh, the old friend of Mrs. Dalloway in the novel by Virginia Woolf, comes back with new feelings. I will give you the time to read the few sentences. New feelings because in which circumstances, in which moment in our life we see a city, the way we perceive it can change. When I was 19, I spent 5 weeks in London alone, and I was busy discovering all the neighborhoods of the city, which looked to me so modern at that time compared to Paris, so daring with the miniskirts in the streets and the music of the Beatles in the air. When I came back in 2012, we were arriving from New York, the always busy city, and it was a Sunday in November. London seemed gloomy, sleepy, vintage. But in 2018, June, as we were arriving from the quiet countryside, quiet English countryside of the merry old England, London seemed to be bursting with life. People everywhere, new buildings with unusual shapes. Even the Tower Bridge looked younger. Yes, depending on where we come from, when we arrive, how we arrive, how we are when we arrive, the urban landscape will be seen with different eyes. I had seen Bruges many years ago, once quickly. We came back to Bruges recently after having read and reread the fascinating novel by Georges Rodenbach, the symbolist writer, Bruges, la Morte, The Dead Bruges, 1892. You can see the book cover of an Italian edition on the right. It was not the same Bruges I had seen before. Without confusing literature and reality, it was a better, deeper experience than the previous time. And of course, the way we visit the city, the reasons, the length of our sojourn will change also our perception. I will just mention the transportation. In San Francisco, it would be a pity not to take at least once the cable car if you are not afraid of being insanely shaken. You will enjoy beautiful views of the city. In London, do like the Londoners and take a double-decker. To go from one point to another, in London like elsewhere, the best public transportation is the metro. This is London metro map, the first one in the world. Washington. Of course, you don't see anything. This is why the best underground is above ground, like in Chicago. Chicago with the loop, or the elevated metro in Paris. Sorry. But the best way to see, to feel, to understand, to enjoy is to visit on foot, to wander. To rove, ramble, move about without a fixed course. To travel about, on or through. He wandered the streets. The second definition is the one fitting my subject here. There is an endless literature about walking. You can find it in Rebecca Solnit. Rebecca Solnit's Wanderlust, is a splendid history of walking. There is an endless literature about walking in the city. To give only the names of 3 writers still living, I will mention, for New York, Paul Auster, and the 3 short and fascinating novels of the New York trilogy. And Vivian Gornick, The Odd Woman and the City, her own stories in the Big Apple. For Paris, Patrick Modiano, Nobel Prize. Most of his novels take place in Paris and fit perfectly what Rebecca Solnit says. It's also true for Balzac and Zola in Paris, and also for Paul Auster in New York. In the 1920s, surrealist writers like André Breton, Louis Aragon, were fascinated by Paris. They wrote about it, mixing their life, their dreams, their obsessions with the descriptions of a street, of a shop, of a passage. In the 1950s, Guy Debord coined the word psychogeography. Psychogeography. It's a study of the precise laws and specific effects of the geographical environment. The way the environment influences us. This is more obvious when we walk, as we can become aware of changes, limits in the city, directions we always follow in a spontaneous way. On foot, of course, you see first the big elements, like in car, from a bus, natural settings. This is Amalfi in Italy on its rocky coast. Geneva, Switzerland, between the lake and the mountains. Jura on one side, Alps on the other side. Doha in Qatar, by day or night, the same skyline. We can see the big buildings, public buildings, like this charming Basel City Hall in Switzerland. And this not too charming Boston City Hall. In 2008, Boston City Hall was voted world's ugliest building in an online poll, which was picked by a number of news outlets and embraced as a boon for tourism by Mayor Menino. Iconic buildings: Sydney's Opera, Hamburg Philharmonic, surprising constructions. In Marseille, an incredible cantilever, un porte-à-faux in French, a construction extending horizontally well beyond its vertical support. In Valencia, Spain, a futuristic architecture, part of the City of Arts and Sciences. Oh yes, there is also a Statue of Liberty in Paris. Public spaces like parks, Mission Dolores Park, a most enjoyable place with the greenery on the foreground, grass and palm trees, and the ever-changing skyline of San Francisco in the background. Main axes, which have political meanings: Pennsylvania Avenue in Washington, Avenue Bourguiba in Tunis. But your attention will also go to simple streets, impeccable, quiet, as in Spello, a small city in Italy. Noisy and busy, as in Naples, Italy too. A little disturbing by its angle of inclination in San Francisco. Sometimes the street becomes a portico in Bologna, a city with 40 kilometers of portici, and the longest portico of the world, 4 kilometers. Passage, this one in Paris, but you have the same kind of passages in Brussels and many cities. Souk, Tunis. What most of us enjoy in these covered or half-covered streets is the protection from the sun or the rain, the quaintness and the charm of the old shops. Indeed, the lively street is a street with shops and stores. New and luxurious, like this one in New York, or the Dior store on the Champs-Élysées, the Champs-Élysées in Paris. Old and picturesque, like this old grocery store in Paris, and this one in Barcelona. Humble, like this little guy eager to repair your shoes. Streets, shops, in fact, everything can grab your attention because outside lies magic. Very nice book by John Stilgoe, Outside Lies Magic. Or to say in other words, beauty is everywhere when we know how to look at it, as proclaims the sign in this hairdresser's window. This past weekend, we celebrated in Paris the 150th anniversary of the Wallace fountains, which brought drinkable water to many with a classical touch, with the caryatides sculptures like in Athens. They were offered by Richard Wallace in 1872, an English philanthropist who lived in Paris and understood the need for clean water. There are now more than 100 Wallace fountains in Paris, and there are many more copies elsewhere in the world. As you walk, you become aware of the details, of the contrast between bundles of sticks on the pavement and blossoming models in the store windows in Piacenza, Italy. If harmony is beauty, it was the right time and the right place for the gentleman whose shirt matches the color of the shutters. Symphony in pink and brown for the couple, the lovers on the bench in Saragossa, Spain. New York. Green. New York is green, at least under a certain light. Light and shadow in Valencia. All of that is art by serendipity, but the streets are full of intentional art. Sometimes you just have to look up and you will discover a regiment of Michelangelo's dying slaves. This is in Paris, and this is a post office building. Or a mural. Everywhere now in the world, there are wonderful murals in many cities. This one in Melbourne. Or you can see the Arc de Triomphe, wrapped by Christo and Jeanne-Claude last year in Paris. Advertising. Advertising can play with a famous work of art. Here, for the huge poster hiding the construction works done on a Louvre facade, yes, Qualcomm, a wireless technology company headquartered in San Diego, promotes La France qui avance, France that moves forward, with the splendid idea of reenacting Delacroix's famous painting, Liberty Leading the People, but seen from behind. You could be invited to do your own piece of art. Just choose the right place. In Pau, a charming city in the southwest of France, a frame shows you where it's better to take your photo. Done. Occasionally, I respond to my own invitation to recreate the atmosphere of a painting, like Caillebotte and his Paris A Rainy Day, by taking a photo right from my window. Or Vermeer and his view of Delft, with the famous little patch of yellow wall celebrated by Proust. Here, my humble attempt. Please don't die in contemplating it like Bergotte, a character in Search of Lost Time, who dies looking at this little yellow patch of yellow. Of course, it's sometimes difficult to find beauty. In Liverpool, for example, what a confused image. A jumble of ill assorted elements, buildings, buses, street furniture, fences, signs, lampposts. But let's read what Robert Moore, author on Entrails, says. So let's enjoy the power lines. Let's enjoy the spider web of power lines here in San Francisco at 18th Street and South Van Ness. What the quote suggested was a better appreciation for human environment. Indeed, what we are looking at in the streets of a city is always a testimony of the people and their lives. People who create but seem so small when seen from the roof of a magnum opus like a cathedral, St. Stephen's Cathedral in Vienna here. People who express their political views. People whom other people mourn in the public death announcements so typical of Italy. People working, the postman in England, the painter in Paris, the gardener in India. People going to the market here in Turin. People doing Tai Chi in Place Dauphine in Paris. People tangoing in front of Comédie Française. People playing cards in Chinatown, San Francisco. People enjoying life at the cafes of Chalon-sur-Saône. On the grass in Edinburgh. Among the tombs in Manchester. People praying on the bank of the Ganges. Students protesting in Quartier Latin, the Latin Quarter in Paris. LGBT plus activists taking part in Lyon, Gay Pride. Catalans marching for independence in Barcelona in front of La Pedrera built by Gaudi. Parisians demonstrating against Putin. In short, people living and making history. A city is a patchwork, an accumulation of all the layers of the past. The city is never synchronous with itself, says Marcel Roncaiolo, a geographer. The city is its own memory, says Jean Duvigneau, a sociologist. Walking in the city is diving into history, says Pierre Salnave, a city planner. Time is the architect. The people are the masons, says Victor Hugo, who is Victor Hugo. They all agree. When we look at the city, we look at history. History is everywhere, and not only in the Pantheon, in which entered recently Josephine Baker, the African-American girl from St. Louis, Missouri, who became a dancer, a singer, and an active member of the French resistance during World War II. History and the evolution of society is on the walls. Here in Saint-Étienne, in the center of France, we can still read the stagecoach schedule. It leaves every day at 1:30 p.m. for the nearby town of Annonay. The old bakery has become an ecological fashion store, making us aware of the neighborhood transformations. This old church, with its churchyard behind, reminds us that Charonne was a village when it was, like all the villages surrounding Paris, swallowed by the city in 1860. In Troyes, a gorgeous city 2 hours east of Paris, the 16th century houses have been restored, recovering their splendor of the past and welcoming contemporary stores. And in this old house, now it's a mosque. Everywhere, plates remind us of cultural history. In an elegant building of the posh western part of Paris, Marcel Proust was born, while Edith Piaf, the famous singer, was born in a poor neighborhood in the eastern part of Paris, and not even indoor, but there, on the steps in Rue de Belleville. Layers of history. Hemingway came to live in the house where Verlaine had died. What is now invisible can be figured out by an inquisitive eye. There was a little river in Paris, La Bièvre, a tributary of La Seine. It has been covered and transformed into a sewer. Here and there is a mark on the pavement, reminding us where it was flowing. Even without a mark, we understand why the street makes a curve on my photo on the right, when we compare it with an old picture on the left. I checked the distance between two pillars of the elevated metro. It's normally 24 steps. Here, it's 48 steps. Why? Because when the line was built, 1906, the river was still flowing. we are in fact looking at a bridge. In some places, you feel that history is still in the memory of the people. In old Ménilmontant, eastern part of Paris, I saw recently some engravings on a decrepit wall. Among them, I read, Vive la Commune, 1871. During the war between Prussia and France, the uprising of the Parisians against the government, which had accepted an armistice, was crushed by the French army. The last communards resisted on the hills of Montmartre, Belleville, Ménilmontant, La Butte-aux-Cailles, and 150 years later, some of the people living there keep alive the ideas and the memory of the event. As we approach the end of my lecture, I would like to show you a little piece of paper I discovered a few months ago. Little piece of paper, which is for me the most poignant testimony of the past in Paris. It's on a wall of Rue Royale, near Place de la Concorde. It's the order of general mobilization for the war, August 2nd, 1914. Thousands of orders were posted everywhere in France. They have disappeared, torn, destroyed by the rain, by the wind, by the people. In 1922, exactly 1 century ago, somebody noticed that one was still there on this wall. A little glass box was put to protect it. This simple object, unnoticed by most passers-by, is a symbolic reminder of the horrific slaughter to come, World War I, Europe's suicide. Destruction, reconstruction, the city lives, dies, resurrects. In Coventry, England, the ruins of the old cathedral destroyed by the bombs in World War II are reflected in the new cathedral glass. And from my window, I see the slow rebuilding of Notre Dame roof and spire destroyed by the fire in 2019. What future for the city? With urban sprawling getting out of control, the city center, testimony of the past, crystallization of culture and art de vivre, art of living, is more and more precious. Two main dangers hover above it. One, gentrification. Here, along Canal Saint-Martin in Paris, where bargemen used to load and unload the barges, yuppies enjoy April in Paris, which, like many other cities, is less and less diverse. Two, Disneyification. Disneyification, like here in San Antonio, Texas. San Antonio city center is lovely, with the river meandering between the restaurants. But is it still a city or only an amusement park? We could definitely worry about the future of our cities, but I will not worry too much about the flâneur and the flâneuse. I know they will find the melancholic pleasure to wandering among young ruins, like the remnants of a powerful industry in Charleroi, Belgium, the way they have been doing for generations in Pompeii, silent streets. Thank you very much.
Yeah, Didier, that was absolutely fantastic.
Thank you very much.
And it gives me a new lens, I think, to see cities next time.
I hope so. That's the purpose.
That's the purpose. Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
I
yeah, absolutely.
I I think when I travel next and I walk around, I will imagine I'm looking through the camera lens of DDA, right? And
Okay.
trying to see it as you see it, because it's you have such great eye for these things, and you're able to use your camera lens to capture, I think, some of that perspective that you have, and then of course explain to us your thoughts on this.
If you
So
enjoyed the lecture, I would say that everyone can also enjoy the 4 books I wrote about my 4 hikes in France, because it's the same mood, France and its neighboring countries. And if you can't find them anymore online, contact me and I will be glad to send you the ones you are interested in.
yeah, and I think for the viewers, what we will probably try to do, we send a newsletter out to our members every so often. I forget how often that is. And we usually do have something talking about our last presentation. And in this case, I think we'll try to gather some of these book references and include it in that. If you're a member, you will receive that
Sure.
newsletter in as an email. If you're not a member, you can actually go to the website encorelearning.net and it'll be posted there. And while you're there, you might consider becoming a member of Encore Learning as well. So that's at least we'll see if we can do that, because I think people can, of course, take a screenshot as we have this this slide up there as well, if you're able to handle that technology. So now, before we do the Q&A, I do want to talk about upcoming events that we have scheduled. So hopefully people have had a chance to kind of jot down or take a screenshot here, because I'm going to share my screen so I can talk about the future events coming up. Hold on a second. And hopefully I can get it full screen here. There. Oh, okay. Finally. Now, yeah. So, this is a political town that we live in, and we strive to cover the issues of the day. And the next 2 speakers will tackle more than just the issues of the day. They will address quintessential issues that continue to shape our society and country. So, on October 17th, we have Chuck Rosenberg. He has been a guest speaker a few times before, both in the library and virtually. He is always very, very informative. Just take note that the time, it will begin at 2:30. I don't want anyone to miss any of his presentations. So make sure you note that on your calendar. It starts at 2:30 p.m., not 3 o'clock. And then in October 31st, we have Bonnie Stabile talking about her latest book, Women, Power, and the Rape Culture, which I think that will be a very interesting lecture and discussion. And they're all use the same Zoom sign in. You can also find the link on our website. Now, what we also want to give you a sneak preview going forward for the rest of this year. On November 14th, we have Dan Sherman, the 18th anniversary of a Casablanca movie release. He will be doing his thing, which is always fantastic. I know he's done it previously for us on using West Side Story and the Hamilton movie. So that'll be entertaining. And then on December 12th, we have Monica Nagoi talking about the many connections between beauty and math. And we actually have the benefit and the pleasure of having Monica, who's in the same location as Didier, and she can talk about what her presentation will be about better than I can on December 12th. So, and just to let you know, Monica, I mean, I'm going to give a more full bio when she actually is a speaker in December, but she has an extensive biography. Just to note that she began her career teaching mathematics at Georgetown University and was also program director at the National Science Foundation. She's made a name for herself on both sides of the Atlantic for innovations in teaching mathematics. And I will, hopefully we can get her on screen and available and
Yes,
talk a little bit more about our upcoming topic.
David, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. I'm going to stop.
I'm not putting the video on because I had to go in a bathroom and lock myself in so I wouldn't have reverberation between our two microphones. So I'll just show you my slides and share my screen. Thank you.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah.
Thank you for the opportunity. So it'll be very quick. And thank you all. I loved Didier's talk, as you can all imagine. So I'm just going to be very short, but because you asked me to say something. So that's the topic. There will be 3 parts. The first part is short. It will be a reflection and pondering on what is mathematics. If you're thinking of school math that you didn't like, then forget that. You're going to discover a new world. If you think math is numbers and computation, well, that's a correct answer, but it's 2,500 years old as an answer. So mathematics has evolved a lot, and we'll talk about that briefly and say what math is today. Math is also about beauty, so we're going to define beauty. Didier talked a little bit about beauty. We'll look about what the poets and philosophers, artists and writers thought beauty was. So that's the sort of the reflection pondering part. The second part, which is the first big part, is we're going to look at beauty in our world, either human-made or natural beauty, and discover the hidden mathematics behind them. So for example, here we have a beautiful temple of the Nabateans, 2,000 years old, constructed by man and women with no technology of what we have today. So amazing. We're going to look at art, sculpture, music, tessellations, and maybe even theater, because a lot of you know we were in theater and we still are. Part 2 or part 3, the second big part in the part 3, which is really the heart of it, is what do we mean when we say mathematics is beautiful? When I tell people I speak about math and beauty, they think, well, those are mutually exclusive concepts. How can you find beauty in math? Well, we can look at some amazing equation, not this one, but one that's so simple, it's amazing. We can look at surprising connections between mathematics that are 300 or 400 years apart, and yet they discover some common concept. Some perplexing paradox that we can't understand, but there it is to behold. And what do we mean by a beautiful mind? We're going to look at a 9-year-old's mind and an adult mind, a historic mathematician. And I'm going to end with one of my favorite mathematical objects. When you look at it, you say, is that math? Yes, produced by a simple equation and powerful computers. One of the most studied mathematical objects. Is it art? Is it jewels? Is it math? It's mathematics. So tune in. Hope to see you on December 12th. I'm going to go back to where Didier is and close my computer. So if there are any questions, thank you. Was that okay, David? Is that what you
no,
want?
that's fantastic. And I presume you'll be able to do the presentation from somewhere other than your bathroom next time. But thanks for doing what you had to give us a sneak preview. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
And let's see. Okay, yeah, great. So we had previously agreed that Monica would actually moderate the questions, but while they maybe are trying to set up that possibility. There you are. Yeah, but let me ask my own question. So, you mentioned that it's great to walk around the city and some of the public transportation is above ground. One of the things I found is that I love the experience of taking the public transportation, and also sometimes you pop out. Where you pop out, like I'm thinking of Montmartre, you pop out in that wonderful neighborhood, and it's so different than other parts of Paris, and you're just, you know, magically transported, and, you know, a few steps away from seeing Sacré-Cœur. And I don't know what that's just what do you, is that something you also enjoy doing, or what do you think of that thought?
Well, to answer your question, and also to answer the first question regarding I see bus tours on large groups and so on. I think what I suggest indeed is to visit for me, but I cannot give that as a rule for everyone. But that's true that because I was a geographer at the beginning of my life, I studied urban geography, so I feel comfortable in any city. And even in cities I don't know at all, because I discover, I try to understand them quite quickly. So yes, I think you can dare and go everywhere, and public transportation is really the best way if you cannot walk, because there are cities which are very, very big and we are not really walkable. So public transportation is the right solution for that. And don't be afraid to pop up, as you say, in a new neighborhood. If you have a guidebook, a map, and you will find your way easily, I think.
Yeah, and the other thing I'll just say, I love every metro system has their own system, you know, whether it's a token or a card or whatever.
Yeah.
And trying to, you feel like a child sometimes, again, trying to figure something out that everyone else is doing, you know, very quickly and has no problem. And there you are trying to fumble around, figure it out. I find that an interesting experience.
I would like to respond to answer some questions. I see there. Yeah. Are any of these books in English? Yes, many of the books I gave were in English. You see on Outside Lies Magic, or Wanderlust, and others are in English, of course, written by English people. And the French books, of course, are famous and have been translated. And my book are in French.
But well, your book, you said you're looking for a U.S. publisher? Yes. The new book.
Yes. Is the Statue of Liberty in Paris, somebody asked, an exact replica of the one made for New York? Yes, of course it was, because the Statue of Liberty comes from France. So the sculptor Bartholdi made the big one in New York, which is in fact, the structure inside is by Eiffel. The engineer who built the Eiffel Tower built also the structure of the Statue of Liberty. And there are many replicas elsewhere. And in Paris, I showed the photo of the big one, but there are also smaller replicas of the Statue of Liberty elsewhere in Paris. I don't know about Montserrat Caballé because I did not go to, somebody asked, I believe Barcelona was the home of late great opera singer Montserrat Caballé. Is there any kind of memoriam for her there? I don't know, because I did not go to Barcelona in the last 10 years, so I'm not sure about that. Do you have any recommendations about non-internet maps to use to help us wander in cities? Yeah, sure. In any good guidebook, anyway, like Lonely Planet or The Rough Guide, you have always very simple city maps. And also, you can also, for sure, buy paper maps of great quality. You will find them, for example, most of the time in the cities you are visiting. No, my books are, sorry, are your books in English? No, they are in French for now. It's all right. I think I read most of the questions. From your view of Notre Dame, could you see the restoration of the tower? How close to reopening the cathedral to the public? Well, the French president, Emmanuel Macron, said the Notre Dame must be ready for the Olympic Games 2024. But the specialists, the people who are working there, are not so sure about the deadline, because the work is very long and very difficult.
Okay, Chris, I know you're trying to clear out the questions. You have to put, click done once you say answer live. Just mention that if you're trying to clear out the questions.
Yes, I read also somebody said, I have found great maps from the local tourist offices. That's a very good answer. It's not a question, but it's a very good answer, a very good tip. In fact, indeed, when you arrive in any city, the first thing I do is going to the tourism office, ask for the map of the city. And very often they have very nice, simple maps. And on these maps, they have an idea for a walk through the city. In little town or middle-sized towns, it will be only 1 hour, 1 hour and a half, and you will see the most interesting things of the city. Then you can wander out of the trajectory. But that's a very well efficient way of discovering a new city.
Yeah, I think you might have mentioned the hop on, hop off city tour buses, but I mean,
yeah.
Do you ever use those?
No, I don't know them. I cannot tell you. I think they are very convenient, and I think they are very nice in some cities, but I don't know. I cannot talk about that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I use them occasionally if I don't know the town, city very well. They can be useful, I guess, for that. Yeah, and I guess Steve mentioned sitting on the curb enjoying street musicians in Paris as an experience.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
Street musicians in the streets and also in the metro stations.
Yeah. So one of the things some of our audience may be interested in, as far as taking the pictures. I mean, your photos are really fantastic. And maybe you could talk about, well, what kind of equipment do you use? How do you go about deciding what picture to take? Do you just take a lot and then kind of find the best, or what's your process for getting such great pictures?
In fact, I use only a very small camera, because I have a big one, but SLR. But in fact, it's more convenient to have this. I have to tell you that I don't have a smartphone, so I don't take photo with a smartphone. But you could do that without any problem and with good results. But what I have here, the small camera, this one is a Canon, but I used to have a Sony and so on. So I have always that on me, like it's like taking photos, it's like taking notes, you see? So I take a lot of photos, and on every aspect of the city, but of course, on many aspects, I know which are interesting for me or for the project I have. And I take the photo and I take notes when I come back in the evening, and I know when the photo will be part of my project. For this lecture, which was a little different from my book project, I went through my photos. That means more than 10,000 photos, at least on urban landscapes, to find the right ones to be a good illustration of what I was ready to say.
Yeah. And I guess one other question I have now, your photos did not include any statues, which is interesting to me, because there was one trip that I made, and there was a lot of discussion in the US about statues. And so we actually would stop people near the statue and ask them if they knew the story behind the statue. And sometimes, many times they didn't, and we would have it, but we would have a discussion with them about what it was about. Although one time the person was involved in putting the statue up and was able to give us the entire story. And it was a very interesting experience. I was wondering, so I didn't see too many, or I don't know if I saw too many statues in your pictures. Is that something that you don't necessarily look at, or you have and just didn't include here?
No, David, that's a good question. And indeed, in fact, I take a lot of photos of statues. And I like very much statues, sculpture, and I take many, many photos of statues, and very often from different angles and so on. It happens that when I was preparing this lecture, I decided, as I told you at the beginning of my speech, that I would choose some aspects, and I just left on the side the aspects of the statues. Same way, if you want, there were photos of modern architecture and just a few old houses, but I take also a lot of photos of 17th century classical architecture, 18th century, 19th century, that you did not see tonight because I was just covering part of my subject.
Yeah, okay. We have a greeting from bonsoir, Didier de Encore. What do you think of youth hostels? For me, it's a good means to discover the originalities of a city and talking with people who come from all over the world.
Sure. I'm happy to say hello to Caroline. I agree with you. I think it's a good mean to discover the originalities of a city. I have to confess that I've not been in a youth hostel for many years, maybe since I was young. I don't remember exactly, but very often we talk to young people in many cities and enjoying the visit thanks to a youth hostel, which is a very non-expensive way of living in cities which are more and more difficult to visit because of the prices of everything. There was a question. Do you have? I just saw the question.
Yeah, it went away. I'm not sure why. I think it was about what's your favorite city or sites? From Lorna.
I would say, if I have an answer, what is for me the most beautiful city in the world? This is a city we have not seen tonight, is Venice, because I think it's a very, very special city. I enjoy, of course, very, very much Paris for many, many reasons. I think it's a city very, very interesting, not only because I was born here, but for many other reasons. But there are many cities I enjoy a lot. For example, tonight there were some photos from San Francisco. This is, I think, a very, very gorgeous city. I like walking in San Francisco, but I like walking also in New York or Boston. And in Europe, many, many cities are absolutely fascinating because we have quaint, old, charming streets and so on. And I would not answer specifically about one city, but I would answer about one country. I think in Europe, there is a very, very nice country, which is underrated sometimes, and this is Spain. In Spain, there are many big cities, small cities, and absolutely gorgeous.
Okay, I don't know if anyone else has any suggestions on how to best travel and how to best experience the cities. I know someone, the hostel question, youth hostels, I think some of them are rebranding themselves just to be hostels, people of any age, really.
Yes, yes, that's true, that's true. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, and I don't know, any other, so we don't have any questions, any other observations you have, Didier?
No, when you started to to speak. David, you said that that speech gave you the idea of traveling and so on. So I think for me it's very important. But I mean, when I speak about a subject like that, it's indeed to give people the desire to go and visit in a way a little deeper maybe than the traditional way. And I said at the end that we don't know about the future of the cities, and we don't know about any future anyway with the global warming and so on. Nothing is sure, but it's clear that the cities are changing very, very quickly, and that when we are talking of cities, when I am talking of cities like everybody, in fact, we are talking of the city centers. That means the oldest parts of the city, of the cities. But most of the people today don't live in the city center. So the city is changing, and the city center is, as I said, it becomes more and more a museum.
Yeah, not a real living, working city.
Yes. So if you want to see cities, just don't let the years go away.
Yeah,
And
good.
thank
Good.
Lorna, who is thanking me for my speech. Thank you.
No.
Thank you very much, all of
Yeah.
you. Thank you, David.
Yeah, thank you, Didier, for being staying up late in Paris time to be able to do this.
Not too late.
Yeah.
Only
maybe your
10:20.
dinner hour. Yes.
Only 10:20.
Yeah. But I very much appreciate that, and I want to thank everyone for tuning in and with some insightful questions. I hope you enjoyed it, and please join us for our next presentation in October. So, okay, Didier, I will.
Thank you.
Talk to you
Bye-bye.
sometime later. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.